All right, welcome back to Biggest Little Victory with Stephen.
And Pastor Kendra.
And our special guest today is...
Hi, I'm Emma.
We're going to get this down. We're going to create a whole format. I just like embarrassing our guests. That's great. So we have Emma on today's podcast, and we're really excited because, one, if you hadn't noticed, our audio sounds so much better. So now it is not a trick of the ears. We are actually in a studio today. Well, quote-unquote studio, as Kendra is reminding us with her fingers.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. It's being set up currently. So this is a whole new format, but it's kind of nice being together in a setting, not on Zoom and having to worry about internet and all those other kinds of things. So yay for us. So we are going to get started with some announcements. Kendra, what is coming up?
Hello, everybody. So give us a like on Facebook at Victory Christian Fellowship. Follow us on Instagram at VCF Reno. Also like us on YouTube at VCF Reno, or follow us on YouTube. It's follow us on YouTube, not like us. I mean, you could like us, but subscribe. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
I was like, I know what the button's called. Every YouTuber says it.
Right. Follow us on Twitter at BLV Podcast, which none of you are doing. We have gotten no new followers, so it's like, what's the point? But we're trying here. It's there. It's there in case you just want to. So there are still a couple Zoom meetings going on every morning, which is at 8 a.m. We have morning fellowship, and we are going through a Bible study called Disciples Path. Once that Bible study is over, we are going to switch that to a 1 day a week group, since everything's kind of switching back to normal. But that, as of right now, it's every day at 8 a.m. And as far as I know, the men's fellowship Zoom meeting is still meeting on Saturdays at 9. Okay, nobody.
I'm sorry.
Okay, nobody here knows. There's two women and a man who's not a participant.
Love to be. Well, I was a participant, and now I can no longer be a participant.
Yes, that's right.
Schedule,
yes,
so.
Yes, Mr. Working Man over here.
At long last.
So as of right now, as far as I know, men's fellowship is still at 9 o'clock. All of these are subject to change once we finally start meeting in person, which is this weekend. Whoop, 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 whoop. We are now offering 2 services on Sunday morning to abide by social distancing laws. One is at 9 a.m. and the other is at 11 a.m. We have to keep these under 50 people, and that includes staff and worship team. So if you are already a member of our church, you should have received an email from Pastor Rhiannon asking which service fits your preference. You can either pick 9 a.m., 11 a.m., or either. It doesn't matter. If you are not on our email list, please reach out to us on our Facebook to let us know what service you prefer to attend. There's a million pastors at our church. You can pick from the many, and we'll make sure that it gets.
She said million pastors.
and we'll get it to the correct person. We will also be live streaming both services on our YouTube at VCF Reno. And if you are within a mile of the church in South Reno, you can tune in to 98.5 FM to listen to it in your car. Even if you just drive to the church and sit in the parking lot, you can listen to what's going on inside, which is awesome if you still do not feel comfortable coming in. Or if we have reached capacity, which is awesome, but also kind of a bummer. Because
show up, sorry.
Sorry, we
50th
can't.
person just walked in.
We can't let you in because there's too many people in there. Under different circumstances, that'd be sweet.
Gonna have a bouncer with a rope. You're not on the list.
Right. And our live devotionals are so on and off right now. I'm not even sure what's going on with them because nobody talks to me. So if you follow us on Facebook, just keep an eye on our Facebook for when we go live. It's been quiet for quite a few days. So I think
no emails or nothing.
Yeah. So I think that we're not doing those right now. But if you never know. Just keep an eye just in case.
I think all the past ones are up. So if you want to pretend
right,
like
there's
we're
that
still
too.
doing
Back
it.
and watch
There's that too.
them.
And I know that the second round of the 4D challenge is about to start. So we'll start going live again. So, all right. And if you have prayer requests, Pastor Liz is taking those and emailing them to the pastoral staff every evening. She posts where she would like them on the Facebook. So once again, if you don't like us on Facebook, then you're missing out because all these things that I said I really have to do with Facebook.
So true. So is she posting on VCF Family or the VCF main page?
As far as I know, VCF Family.
Okay.
So yeah, there's also that Facebook page. We also have a VCF Family Facebook page, which is VCF Family. So there's that too. So
check both. If
yes.
you don't see where she posted, if you're on one and she has not posted where she would like prayer requests,
it's in the other.
Then it's on the other one.
Yes.
That sounds so lazy. We could totally just look it up.
I know. We're just like, nah.
We did this podcast for you. You can go look up a link.
Right. Yeah.
That's your job. We're not gonna have any listeners anymore.
Right. They're like, wow, this really went downhill fast.
All right. So we have a little story we want to share. I don't know if you've been enjoying the stories that I've been finding. Some of these are old. Some of you have pointed out that, well, that was like 2 years ago. Well, yes. But you know what? Jesus happened 2,000 years ago, and we're still talking about him.
Mic drop. Don't drop the mic, but mic drop.
We can talk about older stories and still be happy that, hey, this happened. And, if it's not happening now, then you go create a new story so that we can go and shine your awesome news to the world. Enjoy, and we will be back.
Inside the county courthouse in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Judge Lou Oliveira made headlines with an unusual decision.
You may be seated.
A few years ago, Joe Cerna was arrested for drunk driving. As part of his probation, he wasn't allowed to drink. So when he lied about a recent urine test, the judge felt he had no choice.
I gave Joe a night in jail because he had to be held accountable.
It was just one night, but as he entered the cell, Joe says he knew it would be one of the longest nights of his life.
When I walked into the jail cell and they closed the door behind me, I started feeling this anxiety.
It came back.
It came back, a flashback.
Retired Army Sergeant First Class Joe Cerna did 3 tours in Afghanistan and has 2 Purple Hearts to show for it. The Green Beret survived an IED and a suicide bomber. But he says his scariest moment was the night he was riding in a truck with 3 other soldiers.
What happened?
We were following the creek, and the road gave way. And the vehicle went in the creek.
Truck started filling with water?
Yeah. All hope was lost.
Trapped and unable to move, Joe felt the water rising, past his legs, then waist and neck, until finally it stopped at his chin.
How many guys got out of that truck?
Alive?
Yeah.
Just me. I was a sole survivor.
Joe says it still haunts him.
So I suffer from PTSD.
Among his issues,
I would drink.
a fear of being in small, cramped places.
I knew what Joe was going through, and I knew Joe's history, and he had to be held accountable, but I just felt I had to go with him. I felt I had to go with him.
And so, a few minutes after Joe was locked up, Judge Lou Oliveira surprised the man he sent to jail by joining him for the entire night.
We ate meatloaf, and we talked about a lot of things.
We talked about our families.
And the walls got further apart?
The walls just they didn't exist anymore. He brought me back to North Carolina from being in a truck in Afghanistan. That meant so much to me, sir.
This past week, Joe promised the judge no more mess-ups.
I don't want to let you down, ever.
It's not how law and order usually works.
Right, sir.
But sometimes jail is not what a man needs. Sometimes the best sentence
Love you. I love you.
is compassion.
Thank you for breathing me.
I just thought that was awesome that the judge would do that. I didn't even know you could do that. You're like, I just want to go spend a night in jail with that guy. Like you can just,
Judges can have a lot of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool that he was willing to do that for him and help him out in that way, especially after that. I can't even imagine that. I think that the part that hit me the most was where he goes, and when he was asking him, like, how many of you made it out there? And the guy goes, alive?
Yeah, that was pretty
I was
gnarly.
like, oh man. Ouch.
Yeah. But, I mean, Minus that, it was a pretty feel-good story. Way to put a damper on it, sir.
That's the part that hit me. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Right,
It's
and
heavy, but no,
yeah.
it's a great story.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it
And
is.
I'm glad I keep finding these.
Well, especially when you go before a judge. He's the most intimidating person in the entire world, right there. He or she.
Right.
Sorry.
It's just great
Equal.
that like that much good can come out of good. Like him helping him out, he's like, okay, I'm not gonna mess up anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
So, those of you who this time maybe you're actually doing it correctly and are looking for the sermon to listen to before you listen to this podcast are so out of luck because there is none. There isn't a sermon for you to find. The audio somehow did not record on Sunday, so we don't have a sermon for you to listen to, unfortunately. So we're just going to have to do that awesome of a job of describing what was said.
And that's the story of our lives.
There's always audio. It's always something with audio. It's great.
It's not even surprising when it happens anymore.
It's true. So the newest sermon this week was called Loud and Clear, and I'm just very passionate about the voice of the church and how we're supposed to be hoping for this world and just kind of the message that God has for us. And so we're going through Hebrews, and actually we're going to be going through Hebrews pretty much through Labor Day is what Pastor David said. So we're starting out in chapter 1. We're going to go through verses 1 through 14, and we will just get right into it because, again, there's no clip for me to play from the sermon. I'm so sad about that.
Also, fun fact, while we're in Hebrews, Emma and I are both giving our very first full-length sermons.
yes.
Full length sermons.
Whoop, whoop.
So if you don't live in Reno, you should just come visit, and then just come visit VCF. And
Twice
listen.
this year.
Twice.
Once in July and
yeah.
once in
Yeah,
August.
Yeah, you got to come back twice. So, no, we're super excited about that. So definitely come check out Pastor Emma and Kendra, who are going to be giving their first sermons. It's going to be awesome. All right, starting in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1, going through 14. If you want to follow along with us, please do. Otherwise, sit back, and then we will see you in a second. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets many times and in many different ways. But now, in these last days, God has spoken to us through his Son. God has chosen his Son to own all things, and through him he made the world. The Son reflects the glory of God and shows exactly what God is like. He holds everything together with his powerful word. When the Son made people clean from their sins, he sat down at the right side of God, the Great One in heaven. The Son became much greater than the angels, and God gave him a name that is greater than theirs. This is because God never said to any of the angels, "You are my Son. Today I have become your Father." Nor did God say of any angel, "I will be his Father, and he will be my Son." And when God brings his firstborn Son into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." This is what God said about the angels. God makes his angels become like winds. He makes his servants become like flames of fire. But God said this about his Son: God, your throne will last forever and ever. You will rule your kingdom with fairness. You love right and hate evil. So God has chosen you from among your friends. He has set you apart with much joy. God also says, Lord, in the beginning you made the earth, and your hands made the skies. They will be destroyed, but you will remain. They will all wear out like clothes. You will fold them like a coat, and like clothes you will change them. But you will never change, and your life will never end. And God never said this to an angel: "Sit by me at my right side until I put your enemies under your control." All the angels and spirits who serve God and are sent to help those who will receive salvation. So, Pastor David did not go all the way into that.
I was going to say, wow, I don't remember some of that. Was I really not paying attention that much?
he mentioned the whole thing because he was kind of, some of it you can pull from the entire thing, especially where he talks about how God treats and views sin. But generally, yeah, he stayed kind of in the top 4 verses is where he spoke from the most. So, I'm going to have you go first this time, Kendra, if you'd like.
Okay.
For questions for Emma, or just questions for all of us.
Okay.
Singled out here.
All right.
Singled out.
You know what? He doesn't do it that often. I might as well stay on my toes. All right. Well, the first question I have is, the world is incredibly divided right now. Also, I just want to add this one thing without getting too political with it. What is going on in our world right now is breaking my heart. Like, straight up 100% breaking my heart. I cried for our city and our country on Saturday night because of what was going on. And just another little redemption story here. When Reno City Hall got broken into on Saturday night, they took the flag from the USS Reno, which was in World War I, I believe. It was a Navy ship in World War I. One of the world wars. I probably should actually do research before I bring it up. But it was one of the world wars. And the flag that flew on that ship sat in City Hall in a glass case. Well, during the riot on Saturday, someone stole it.
Wow.
And there was also videos of people burning the American flag in front of the RPD station. So I was really scared that it was that flag that they were burning. Today, the flag was anonymously returned to a news station, to KRNB4, I believe.
Oh,
And
nice.
so the flag was returned. It was not the one that was burnt in front of Reno Police Station. Thank God. I was so worried about it for some reason. I was just so attached to this flag.
It's a piece of history. It's a
Right.
piece of important history.
Right. And so that's another redemptive story, that something good happened in our personal bubble here in Reno, Nevada. But anyway, so the world is incredibly divided right now. So if you could get on the world stage without getting terrible stage fright, because I wouldn't want to
I was
talk in
gonna
front
say,
of the
I'd
whole
probably,
wide world.
Freeze up. But, you know.
What verses from the Bible would you use, and what would you just say in general to them?
So I was kind of thinking about this, and I think I would just try to speak love in people's hearts as much as I can, because that's the most important thing out there. And I kind of was going through a couple of verses. Sometimes I find Bible verses and I'll like stick them in a journal, and came across this one, and I thought it would be just something really good to say. I don't know. When you're in front of that many people, I don't know what you really say at that point, if you were in front of the whole world. But I came upon Ecclesiastes.
That's a bad one.
Yeah.
That's Ecclesiastes.
Really hard one.
Ecclesiastes, sorry.
You're good. You got it.
Chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. They say, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And I think this just stands to say that when we stand together and when we love on one another, that anything is possible, that love overcomes this evil, and that when you have another person to hold on to and to lift up, and that person to lift you up as well, like anything anything is possible, and you can overcome all the just the bad around you. And even though you may not physically be able to prevail against that, you are stronger together.
Bad people are stronger together, though, as well. So that's kind of a hard one. Like, I'm
Thanks.
I'm
Putting it down.
Now he's putting the damper on things, okay?
But see, because I think that's kind of what happened in the world. One person fed off of another. One person got angry, then the next person got angry, then the next person got angry.
I have a second verse, just I put a maybe by it.
Okay.
And
Okay,
I have a
so
second
this
one.
is sorry.
Okay. So it's from 1 John chapter 4, verse 12, and it says, "No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us." And I think that goes along with it, because Kendra's right, if the bad stand together, they will also be stronger. It's just the way it is. But love is stronger than that, and love overcomes, and love is made complete in us when we recognize that. And we haven't ever seen God, but that's where hope is, and that's where hope lives on in each and every one of us.
Yeah, because everything that happened before the riots, all the peaceful protests, everything like that was incredibly empowering. And it was the people who really need Jesus in their lives who decided to make it about them instead of making it about what they were protesting. And it the peaceful protesters had to scramble to say, hey, this wasn't us. Ours ended 2 hours ago. And so please do not put our names on this. And so it's hard when,
You're talking about what happened to you, right?
well, everywhere,
Okay.
everywhere. It wasn't just here. It was LA. It was everywhere from what I can tell, that it just, every time there was a Black Lives Matter protest, which was always peaceful, there was a secret group of people who were like, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here, and riot. Or, hey, you're in this sect, you're in that. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, this is real news. It's not fake news. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that people had to scramble to be like, no, this was not what we did. This is what these people did.
Right.
And so it kind of has to kind of do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Where we're like, no, we're not these people. We're good Christians who love and will do anything for our brother. And we don't feed off of anger, we feed off of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking forward to when these riots stop, because then we can actually get back to talking about
We were
how
just getting normal,
yeah, we
people.
were just getting normal.
We were just getting
now
normal.
we can start talking about how we rebuild.
Right.
And we already have some of that happening. We have communities who are, because a lot of cities are now experiencing curfews, so you have communities where there are some older people who can't get out, and then they definitely can't get out by the time curfew hits.
Mm-hmm.
So we have people going and getting their food for them. We have, like what happened here in Reno, where you had a riot happen where there's some damage going on downtown, people throwing trash everywhere. And then the next day we had some people cleaning it up.
The rally.
And there
Yeah.
were
The true
probably,
Reno.
like hundreds of people that came and helped clean up and get graffiti off of walls and off the streets.
And that was everywhere. That wasn't just here, you
Yeah.
know. So it's. I mean, we're focused on it because we live here, and it
Right.
was a thing like is a surrounding that we're familiar with. But man, I can't believe it happened all over the country.
Yeah.
And I understand. I
scary.
understand everybody's anger, sure,
Right.
but I don't understand ruining where you live.
No, I don't either. And like you said, it's a huge conversation. It could be a whole nother
yeah.
podcast, we can go into.
But it's all I can think about.
That's all I even can think about right now. It's a weird time. It's a crazy time, I'm telling you. But I agree, Emma, that that's, well, with both of you actually, whatever group you're in, if you're in a big group, you have a lot of strength. But ultimately, I think hate burns out. There's only so much hate, and then eventually you just kind of get tired. Whereas the way that I see love tends to feed off of itself and tends to grow.
Burn brighter.
It tends to burn brighter. Hate, it's like when you get really angry, after a while you just kind of get tired of just being angry because you just use up all your energy being upset. Whereas with love, it feels like loving others actually recharges you in doing so. You want to just keep doing it. So it's like those random acts of kindness that you do, and then all of a sudden you're just like, wow, that felt so good. Who else can I help? It's not like, oh, man, that was so tiring. I'm done with that. So that's kind of my hope is I try to take a hopeful look. I try to take an optimistic look, but I'm also a realist. I know what's going on, and I know the hate and the anger that's going on right now, and I understand it, especially being a mixed race man. But, I also want to be hopeful for the world and hope that humanity can choose a better path, which is
love.
love.
Always choose love.
Always choose love. That's one of our podcast titles is All You Need Is Love. Go check that one out. Give us more views.
I'm gonna call you out. Do you have any Bible verses?
I don't. No.
That's okay. I don't either.
But your question is actually similar to one that I had. I said, what are we telling the world if we put ourselves first when telling the gospel? I think actually
Well, that's pretty much my question.
Yeah. Yeah. So then my follow-up to that then would be, how can the church find its voice, especially right now with what's happening?
So I'm kind of going to answer both of those at the same time. So I think when we kind of put our own agenda into our actions and we kind of let that seep in rather than the things we should be really focused on, I think we forget to love others in all circumstances, like no matter what's happening. And our minds get so clouded and we get so caught up in everything that we're doing that we forget that it's not about us really, and it's not about what we want to do or what we think has to be done. It's about loving others, and that we're in it together. It's for God and we're in it together for Him. And I don't think we see what's really important. And so when we put that's what I think what happens when we put our own agenda into things. But for sure, the way that the church, what's the way that you worded it?
Like how the church finds its voice.
Yeah,
in
the
midst of
church.
this.
So I think that is what the church is all about. Even though there's definitely a stereotype that's negative against it, and it's for good reason, Christians do put
Some Christians are jerks.
Some Christians are jerks, and some people do, like, some Christians really do give the church a bad name. But I think the church shows its place in all this by being what it's meant to be, by being love, by being that support system, and just by trying to be there for anyone and everyone. I think that's the way that we just have to do it, is to just check up on people and be loving to them, even if we can't necessarily meet with them because of everything that's going on. But just to be there for them in any way that we can, and just show our voice, and not to be overstepping, but to just be a place of comfort and just safety for those that need it.
And once you find that comfort in a church family, it's something new. It's something awesome, and it's something that you can know you can always count on.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, the past year of my new church family has been the most welcoming. So it makes it makes a lot of sense what you just said, because even if you're not a member of our church, you learn to love like a church, just like if the person in the grocery store line is a member of your church. So.
Right. And it makes me think of what you said before, Kendra, about how the VCF church, not to be so, tooting our own horn on this, but how
Toot,
we've just been, how we've just been killing it, and just all the other stories that we hear about, across the nation of churches just stepping it up and actually having this profound presence in their community to make a difference, rather than just joining in with the hate.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen one person on their personal Facebooks, anything, spread hate, at least a member of our church family, or any of my friends who don't even go to church family, because everything is so crazy right now that most people feel like we need to unite under love. Most people.
Right. There was a quote that Pastor David said on Sunday where he said, "The more we hate, the greater chance we have of becoming what we hate." It's done a direct quote, but boo, yeah. But it's I think it's so true that the more you fixate on what you don't want to be, the more you accidentally start to become that.
I don't know. I hate bad drivers, and I think I'm a pretty good driver.
But so do the bad drivers.
No, I'm sure they know that they're bad. Like, I'm going to cut this guy off.
Yeah.
And I know I'm about to cut this guy off.
Right.
Like, driving is an exception for my Christianity.
So I would counter that with the opposite phrase. The opposite phrase, the more we love, the greater chance we have of becoming what we love.
I definitely agree with that. Love is definitely infectious, and when you love another person, I think they are automatically just more happy and more prone to just show a little bit more love to the next person they see, and it's kind of this ripple effect that I think, if you really look at it, is pretty clear anywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why you use the word infectious, because it could be spread. As gross as that is, but it's also relevant right now. Like, things can be spread if you just show it to the world, and not to make it bad or gross. You definitely mean love, and I'm going to keep it along that lines, but
well, and there's something to be said that for sometimes one act can spread throughout a community. Somebody sees one good deed online, and they're like, that is so cool, I got to do that. And it makes me think of all the times where they've done the pay it forward thing, where someone's in line at the grocery store, and then there's like, oh yeah, I'll pay for the guy's stuff behind me too. And then that guy's like, oh, well then I'll pay for the guy's stuff behind me. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's like those kinds of things can be infectious. And sometimes when you just see one person get involved and do something amazing, then suddenly you have a chain of people doing it, sometimes in the same community, in the same neighborhood, or just even the same country. It could just be somewhere else in the nation. And you never know what action you do might inspire somebody else.
all you country fans out there, you gotta listen to The Chain of Love by Clay Walker, I believe it is. I just looked at it. Yep, Clay Walker. It's exactly what we're talking about. It starts with one guy doing something kind for someone, and then that someone does something kind for someone else, and then it just keeps going and going and going. And I cry every time I listen to the song. It's a good song. So, but it also, everybody can feel it because, well, at least everybody that I know seems to be a pretty decent human being. And When someone does something nice for you, you feel good. And in turn, you might not even realize it, but you're doing something nice for someone else. And then so on and so forth. And it could be a complete chain reaction that you don't even know happens. But the fact that it does is the power of it.
Yeah, I like that. Going back to the beginning of Hebrews, I was reading through just the first three verses, verse 2 verses again. And it's talked a little bit about how God spoke to our ancestors and how he spoke to them was through prophets and, in many different ways. But now he's choosing to speak through his son instead of, prophets and the other various things. And it makes me think about what people say when they are looking to hear from God. And they say, well, I pray all the time, but I don't ever hear him. Or they give excuses as to why they're not Christian because, God just doesn't get my attention the way I want him to. And that just led me to the question of why do you think people demand God speak to them in their preferred method rather than us meeting God on his terms? Why do we feel like we're entitled to make God meet us on ours? Why do you think people are like that?
Because we're selfish.
I think in general it's just hard for just people to believe in something that they can't see or to... It's hard when you don't get answers, and sometimes we don't, there is still pain in this world and we lose people even if we pray for it. Just sometimes that happens, but that's where we have faith that we have a good God, and that things are gonna be okay, that he's gonna help us through it.
And that whatever happened just now happened for a reason. We may never know that reason, and that's okay. You just have to accept the fact that it did.
Which is hard for a lot of people.
Also, another song plug, Unanswered Prayers by Garth Brooks.
She's just going to be giving all the song plugs. You're trying to get us sponsored. I see what you're doing here. You're trying to get us sponsored.
Yeah, by Garth Brooks.
No, by the label.
I mean, Garth, hit us up.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that there are people that it's hard for them to just accept answers without knowing why, and I think there's validity to that because sometimes you really just want to know why that happened, and maybe is there something I can do to prevent it a second time or something like that, or really you're just so distraught, it was so emotionally damaging and traumatizing that you just feel like you deserve an answer. Like, come on, there has to be a reason for why that happened. And it's really hard to let that go. I know that for me in my own personal journey, like accepting Christ was tough because there were some answers there were some stories that I was reading in the Bible that I didn't have an answer for. And no one else, like none of my teachers or pastors had really good explanations explanations that I wanted to hear that made any sense to me. And that was really hard to let that go and just be like, you know what, I'm going to trust God anyway, even if I don't agree with what he did in this passage. Like, if this is real, then he actually did this, and that's crazy. But it was that hard point of understanding that this is what God has done. And yeah, I think getting to that point can only happen when you're in a church family. I think that's the huge important part of meeting together. Some people wonder, like, why are we meeting together? And why do we have to do that every week? And one, you don't have to every week. But two, I think the huge benefit is because you get that help to accept things that normally by yourself you would not be able to accept.
Well, and it's also like back then it was a little bit more accepted. But if God spoke to you and only you and you told people about it, you'd be thrown in a loony bin right now.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
You can't just be like, hey, God spoke to me. I heard God's voice. People would be like, ooh.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to go call a friend. You stay right here. Even hardcore Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I came up to you, either of you, and I'd be like, you guys.
You guys.
God straight up talked to me. Like I heard his voice. I saw his face. I did all this. You guys would probably be a little bit more accepting of it than most people. But if I just did that to a random person on the street, they'd call me and have me committed. So it's even if they are a Christian, because back then, I don't know if have you guys ever watched the Bible on National Geographic?
I did not see that, no.
So you should.
Okay.
100% watch the Bible on National Geographic. National Geographic, hit us up.
We're going to be in a real studio soon.
And
Have assistants.
but the way they portray it is literally, you know, Abraham's walking, and then all of a sudden the voice of God comes down, and he hears it, and he goes to his family and is like, I gotta go. We gotta go because God told me to. And they were, I mean, of course, at first they were like, what? And then they just were like, okay, that's fine. Let's do it. I believe you. Now it would not be that easy. So I get it. You know, some people think that Christians are crazy because they're like, oh, you hear God. And I'm like, I hear God in my heart.
Yeah, it's like, an emotion. Like, that's something that a sibling of mine kind of struggles with. Is they're like, well, how do you... I'm like, well, what do you mean God talks to you? And I'm like, well, it's not literal voice. It's not anything like that. It's
right. For all we know, he sounds like Pee Wee Herman. We don't know what he sounds like.
Yeah, it's just... It's an emotion. It's a safety and a comfort.
Said Pee Wee Herman. Pee-wee.
Or Boomhauer from King of the Hill.
Make sure you come and hear Pastor Kendo's sermon. This is going to be real. This is going to be lit.
Don't say lit. We're almost 30, Stephen, okay? We're not hip enough for this.
That's true. See the way that I text people. I don't use abbreviations. Full sentences with commas.
Oh, gosh.
And periods.
Oh, actual grammar.
That depends on who I text. Sometimes you end a sentence with a period and it becomes
too serious.
Yeah, it's
like, what was that? Like,
right.
Yeah, I can't even text. Like, I hate texting people, so I'll be like trying to use sarcasm, and they'll be like, well, that was rude. And I'm like, no,
I was being sarcastic. I'm sorry.
You gotta add silly faces.
Okay, you were going to say something before I started talking.
It was actually like right along the same lines as what you were saying
Okay.
about how we
how
hear,
it's in the heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you.
Oh.
About Pee Wee Herman.
No, I just happened to think of an exact person. Like, it just happened.
That's hilarious. That's fantastic. Yes, in the heart.
God is in the heart,
yeah.
not in the head. I mean, it's in the head too, but when
think of it this way, like people always thought that there were only 5 senses, and then scientists had to finally correct people because they're saying, no, you have more than 5 senses.
it's called ESP.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Because we have a sense of balance, we have a sense of time, we have a sense of darkness, we have all these other kinds of senses that are outside of physical. And I think that experiencing God is like, I don't want to go as far as like saying an ability, because that sounds weird, but
We're the X-Men.
We're the
Christians
X-Men,
are X-Men.
I think in a way it does. And so hear me out on this. So I think it is kind of an ability, because there was a book called The Magician's Nephew. It's very popular, C.S. Lewis. And one part of it talks about the uncle in the book. And so Aslan is creating Narnia, and he creates the first animals, and they talk. And the uncle did not want to believe that animals could talk and refused to accept it. And so he kept acting as though they weren't. And so eventually he couldn't even hear them talking anymore. He had convinced himself that they didn't anymore. And so I think in a way, God is like that people shut him out so much that they lose the ability to hear him, because they have closed him off so many times that it's just become natural to them to just not even listen anymore, or to think that he's not there. So that's where I'm going with it, with the ability. But I like the X-Men idea. That's kind of cool.
I mean, both are cool.
So it's kind of like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get with it. The better capable it becomes. The more you listen to God, the more you spend time with him, the more you hear him, and the more you're able to discern him in your own thoughts and in your own deeds and actions and in the actions of others. But if you don't spend any time at all, then don't be surprised when it doesn't feel like he's never talking.
It was kind of like what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, where God shows himself through things in your life, through the people in your life, and it's mainly people. I don't really know how else to, because he sent Jesus down to represent him.
Mm-hmm.
And so as disciples of Christ, we were also sent here for people. And so that's kind of how there was a more articulate and non-duh way that I was going to explain it, and it just didn't work. But
That's okay, I like that.
But it is. It's the people who God puts in your lives who show you God.
Yeah.
And also another plug, I Saw God Today by George Strait. So which I talked about during Pastor Lewis's episode. So second plug on that. Garth, hit us up. Oh wait, no, that's not Garth. That's George. That's George Strait. George, hit us up.
George's like, not anymore.
Yeah, he was. And then
He's
it's
all
like,
dialing my phone number and he's like, ooh.
Not about that. Not about that.
So, on Sunday, Pastor David said, God's grace does not need our help. What does that mean to you, Stephen?
Oh, this is the greatest. Like,
I'm so happy
impromptu-
we're able to be together.
So great.
It makes it way better.
Just the way we're asking questions with each other.
Right.
It's just like natural conversations. It's like the most awkward interviewing that you've ever seen. This is awesome. So what that means to me, doesn't need any help, is one, there's nothing that we can add to it, is the way that comes across as me. Like, we can't add.
That was my answer.
Oh, well, there we go. So I read your mind, or I read your notes. The audience will never know.
I don't have notes.
The audience didn't know that. That was part of the
Stephen
joke.
can read minds.
So anyway, I was going to say that it's nothing that we can add to it. You know, what Jesus did on the cross, there's nothing that you and I can do to save anyone. My efforts alone, no matter how much I love people, nothing I could do to get anyone saved. That is all Jesus. But what I can do is talk about the grace of the cross and talk about the grace of God and spread that and live it and live as though that I am redeemed, not live in sin and continuing to kind of do my own thing, but instead to be reminded of the fact that I have nothing to do with saving others and saving souls and bringing people to the family of God. That's his job. That's what he does.
That's very true. My mind goes to the Greek word agape, and David's kind of talked about it a couple weeks ago, but if you don't know what it is, it's basically this like never-ending, totally reckless, crazy, like absurd love that is there. Like, you don't have to do anything to deserve it. It's there for you. It's there for everyone. And that's where my mind goes, because we can try to love people as hard as we can and have all the patience in the world, and really just we can, like, it doesn't matter what our efforts are, is what I'm trying to say, is that our efforts, they do make a difference, but ultimately it's for God, and ultimately he doesn't need us in order to share that love. You know, he's the Omega, he's the Alpha, you know, he's the Almighty Savior, and like, we might be on that journey, but there wouldn't be a journey unless God had a control on it.
He's the instigator of all of our journeys. He started us off, and without him, you know, we put ourselves in a pickle, especially if, you know, the kind of journey that God takes us on to is so fraught with temptations. Not that those are from God, but that's just what's in the world. It's fraught with people who are trying to drag us down, people who are going to doubt us, people who are going to try and distract us from him. And if
Or just argue with you about him.
Argue. And so if you start off this journey with God and then walk away from him in the midst of it, you're putting yourself in a pretty vulnerable situation to not have him with, well.
Careful.
That's why I stopped. I was like, wait a second. Just not have his, I don't know how to say it.
It's different. It's different between knowing God and knowing that he's there.
Yeah.
And accepting.
Right.
So he's always with you, even if you don't accept that he is basically.
Yeah. Like you just feel,
Yep.
you're going to feel more distant. You're going to feel
Right.
more.
Which is 100% true.
Yeah.
Basic, like personal,
Thanks. I was like,
yeah,
how did
yeah.
I say that? I was like,
No.
that's why I stopped in the middle of my sentence.
You're
I was
like, oh.
I was like, wait a second. I'm about to get excommunicated up in here.
Excommunicated. We're gonna vote you off the island, Stephen. The Nazarene Island. You're not welcome here anymore.
It's a big island, you know.
It
A
is
lot
a
of
big
people have
island.
heard of Nazarenes.
That is a big island. But I mean, it's true. It's true. I met Christ. I met Christ. Hi, nice to meet you. I found Christ when I was 16, and I lost him again when I was 17. So I knew Christ for a year, and then from the time that I was 17 to 28, I lost him. So I knew Christ for a year, pretty hardcore. And then I basically pushed him away for 10 years and said, nope, I'm good. I got this. And it was the hardest 10 years of my life. Until I met Dustin, I was a complete screw up. You know, I got arrested. I had piercings all over my face, which is not a bad thing and doesn't make you a Christian. I have piercings now, but I had a lot of piercings. I had bright pink hair. You know, I had no cares in the world. No cares in the world, making bad choices. And then when I found him again, I was like, wow, why didn't I do this sooner?
I think that's kind of common. It's like you think you're doing okay, that you're just really filling a gap.
Right.
And you're doing so much work to fill a gap, and you don't even realize it.
Especially since I had that hole filled for a year.
Yeah.
And then I just walked away from it, and it was just so empty for 10 years that having him again is very fulfilling. I envy you for always knowing him.
Well, the thing with me, is I grew up in the church, but I don't know, I didn't really know about having a relationship with God or anything until I was probably, 13 maybe, or 12, so 3 years.
So yesterday,
4 years ago,
little baby.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. You're more schooled in the Word of God than I am, and I am 13 years older than you, so... Oh, man. Sorry, go on. You found him when you were 13. And what was that like?
My point was that you can be raised in a church and stuff too and not really know Christ, and life can still be really difficult because for me it's when you're a kid or anything, no one really wants to talk about having a relationship with God because it's kind of hard to comprehend. And
you don't want to do it too hard, otherwise you wake up, or you wake up one day. You just grow up, and then you're those people who are like, I had Jesus shoved down my throat as a kid, so I have no interest in knowing him as an adult.
Yep.
But as a kid, I don't know, it was just this switch though when I remember finally getting into a youth group and stuff. It was that switch where I realized that God was this comfort, and it wasn't just, I have to it wasn't just my religion. It wasn't just I believed in God. It was oh my gosh, there's somebody out there that really cares about me, that is listening to me, that is there with me through everything.
I can definitely relate to, just because you grew up in it doesn't mean that you have it your whole life, because I'm the same way. I grew up in the church, and technically a third generation Nazarene, and I have 2 uncles who were Nazarene pastors, and a grandpa who was a Nazarene pastor. So I was just, my whole family, all my cousins, my aunts and uncles, they're all in the church. And so it was never my family was this, and then my cousins are atheists or anything like that. It was my entire family has all been in the church their entire lives. And even with that, there were a lot of times where it just I questioned it. I questioned my faith. I questioned the Bible. I questioned what I was being taught. There were times that I did walk away. I mean, a lot of my 20s was just a mess. But I think that's just a lot of people. It's just kind of what 20s are.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
It's just kind of what happens.
You're welcome for the warning.
I don't know. I feel so I'm no, I don't know. I feel my plans for my 20s aren't
the same as
normal 20-year-olds. Yeah.
Well, no, neither were mine. It's just I will say this: it's not bad. It's just a time of discovery. You kind of
learn a lot about
100%.
yourself.
learn a lot about yourself and what
you grow up really fast.
Yeah, well, yeah, and your energy level changes. And there's just a whole bunch of things.
That's so true. I was talking about it with Dustin the other day. I was like, man, 7 years ago, I could get up and I could stay up until 2:00 in the morning, get up at 6 and be fine. Now I'm it's 9:00. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm about to go get the early bird special and go to bed.
Yeah.
You start to get real comfortable with what you like, but it was just it was hard, because during all that I was questioning things, and so while I'm discovering what I like and what I want to do, and even as what I'm trying to go for doesn't work out, that was the frustrating thing, with so many times when I had a plan and then it didn't happen, and trying to find God in that. I think there was a lot of times that it is hard to stick with it. So even if you do know or have been in that surrounding your entire life, it's still a journey, and everyone has it, and it doesn't make anyone's journey better or worse than each other. It just makes it something kind of cool when you both end up at the same destination, but you got there through different routes. It's like, so how did you end up in church? Like, how did you accept Jesus? And you hear their story and you go, what? That's crazy. And they hear yours and you think like, oh, mine's nothing special, but you never know. They might learn something out of it. And so it's just kind of cool when a church is built out of people who came from so many different routes to that. I love hearing stories about like how people came to Jesus and just what they went through to get to that point. But yeah, it's fun.
If every story was the same, it'd be so boring.
That's true. And at that point, you would start to wonder, like, if it's always the same every time, then you'd start to wonder about the people who hadn't yet accepted Jesus. Like, you're just going to end up here, right?
Right.
Like, I know your story. It's going to be the same as what happened to me.
Like, it's funny because I've been where you are.
Yeah.
So just wait until you're where I am. Let me tell you. But also, Miss Emma here is way more mature than I was at her age. Like, whoa. So I'm not worried about you. Sometimes I think you're an adult. Like, an adult. Like,
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's weird because I haven't experienced, like, I don't feel like a normal teenager sometimes because I feel like I haven't experienced, like, hardly any life. But then there's certain points where, like, I'm at school and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I have this, like, whole other different side of me from being at church to being at school. And not saying that I changed my personality or anything. I'm very open about who I am and what I believe at school and stuff. But it's just, like, just the people I'm around. I'm like, oh, you guys are so immature. Like, I just like, I can't handle it sometimes. So I
felt
definitely
that way sometimes.
feel that. I'm just...
I was one of the immature ones. It took me a while, but I'm here, ladies and gentlemen.
You are here. That is right. You got here by a different route. It's okay.
Yep. And it was
But the journey is
way
what makes
longer.
it interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we all just kind of came to Christ as soon as I did, like,
Right.
and like if we all just kind of went that route and just knew God immediately, then there would be no story to inspire those that have never met Him or don't even know about Him.
Right. And it's a lot better when you can relate to the people you're talking to.
Yeah.
And whichever background you come from. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Any of you have any other points that you caught from the sermon? I know, Emma, you weren't there for it, so you... Shh. It's so bad we just put her on blast. No, I'm just saying all these terms, man. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know
It's
who I am.
lit, fam.
This is bad. This is bad. So bad.
We've been cooped up for too long. We're like
now.
slap happy from being all in one room.
Really need to stop in 30. Okay, so we just kind of brought him into this. So is there anything that you, through all this discussion even, it's just that has come to mind?
No, I think we've hit on pretty much the points that I got from just thinking about it.
Yeah. No, that's good. It was like I said, it was a really great sermon, and there were a lot of different things that I pulled from it, and yeah, I think we did do a pretty good expose on the whole thing, just looking at the whole grasp of who we are as the church and our voice, as well as what we were hoping for in the future, especially with what Kendra has reminded us of just what's happening in the world, and I'm sure what everyone is reminding you of right now, what's going on in the world. And just how clear, like how loud and clear this message from God is that stop with all of the hate and start turning towards love and start rebuilding, because hate is only making things worse. You're only destroying things. You're only destroying each other, and it's not going to solve anything. It's only going to result in more violence. That's all that happens from violence is more violence.
Always love each other. You'll be a lot happier. I promise.
I know that there's a saying that it's so much easier to like just dislike somebody than to love them, and I to some extent I get that and it's true, but I promise that when you love, like when you make that effort to love somebody, like it is so rewarding. Like not only is it like an external thing where you might like introduce the new people and meet others and kind of build relationships, but it's also this personal growth of becoming a better person, a more positive person that is just being loved to those around you. And that feeling is just amazing.
I like that. That's beautiful.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So are there any final announcements, anything else that you can think of that's come up that people should be aware of in the coming days or weeks?
Nope. Stay safe, everybody, and pray for our world. Pray for your towns. Pray for everything. I hope that we can get back to a sense of normality soon, but if this keeps up, it's going to be just a different kind of different, and I'm sick of difference.
There was a new normal,
much
and now there's a
change.
new normal.
Yeah, it's like everything. It's like finally, like everyone's like adjusting to the change, and it just continues to pile on.
Just continues. Yeah, I understand that. Well, Emma, thank you for being with us in our first Back to the Studio podcast.
Glad to be here.
Yes, and we can't wait to have you on again.
Absolutely.
I meant to bring cookies, but we didn't have any chocolate chips, so that'll
So
be
now-
something to look forward to next
You
time.
have to bring her back.
So next week?
I don't care. There's no rules.
Right.
We can do what we want.
That's our podcast.
So, yeah, hopefully all of you enjoyed this, our babbling and our laughter, because as you can tell, hopefully that there's been some great, I've loved there's been some really great points that we've made today, but there's also just been a lot of laughter, and that's been great too, because
The fellowship has been fantastic.
and it's been hard to laugh recently. There's just been so much to not laugh about that it's just nice to be able to sit and hang out with each other. So this is great. So if you like these kind of podcasts instead, where it's just so much more fun, then keep listening, because it's just going to
This
keep
is
happening.
Also, I'm sure Stephen could use some help with finding great news stories. So
Yes.
you guys totally failed at sending us victories, but maybe you guys will be very good at sending us great news stories. So if you hear about a good story or a great news story, please, please send it to one of us so we can put it in our podcast, because it's a fun new segment. Still I'm not wrong. Y'all suck.
No, you're not wrong. It's just the fact that you keep calling out the viewers. No one's going to listen anymore.
That's not true. You gotta add some humor to it. They did. We got literally no victories.
Later
True.
next week. Yeah, none of you guys sent us videos.
So until you send us the content that you want, you get the content that you get. So
If you want to have a role in creation of this podcast, we are offering it to you so many different ways.
not creation.
Well, it's contribution.
There we go. That's a good word.
Contribution. You want to contribute? Please contribute. We're asking you. We're begging you to contribute, because we want to hear your voices. And that's why we try to bring on all these different guests, because we like talking and sitting and laughing with people. So please send in your stories, or just tell us. You can still tell us victories. It's not dead. We can still do it. You can still tell us your great stories out of what's happening. Tell us how your family is coming together in the midst of this, how you and your friends are doing, how your company is getting involved in building up the community. We'd love to hear those stories too. Otherwise, we will be back next week. We're going to do everything we can to get the sermon online this time around. I'm sure we'll have multiple ways of recording it.
since we'll actually be at church, it should be good.
We'll actually be at church, yeah. And hopefully wherever you are, you can attend church. If you can't, then you can always listen to our podcast. We put our sermons up every week when that does record, which didn't happen this week, but every other week it has happened. So this is just like the one anomaly. But we have our sermons up on all the different podcasting platforms. You could also check it out on YouTube. And if you are in the area, then please come and join us on this Sunday, for either 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. And 50 people can get in the building. After that, you can be in your car or wait till the next service, whatever that looks like. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Also, just a little disclaimer. We will be providing masks for those of you who don't have any and would like one at the church. So if you come and you feel safer with a mask, which I don't blame you, we will have a mask for you. So there's that. Emma, would you like to say anything?
We love you guys.
Yes.
Stay safe. Have a great week.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys.
Okay, everybody. Prayers and love.